Hello, dear students. I hope this lockdown is treating you good. Now, without wasting time, let's get started with our lecture number 12, conducted by me, Dr. Sanjay Pagar, Associate Professor, Department of Geography. Dear student, this online lecture series are presented to you by Maratha Vidya Prasarak Samajas, Charity Arts, BS Commerce, and AM Science, popularly known as KTHM College, Nasik. Dear student, today we will discussing a very important subtopic of our first chapter, that is function and type of ecosystem. Dear student, but let's recap what we have seen in our previous lecture. We studied food web and energy flow, and also a very important, these both concepts are very important for functioning the ecosystem. Dear student, now let's talking about the today's learning objective. We have first learning objective, that is to discuss the function of ecosystem. Dear student, you all know in our previous lecture we have already discussed about important terminology related to the ecosystem, such as food chain, food web, trophic level, and energy flow. These all terminologies are also related to the function of ecosystem, as they are important for today's topic. So we will revise them in short. Then second objective, learning objective for today's lecture, that is the study of type of ecosystem. You know that, student, there are numbers of ecosystem, but as per our syllabus, we will dealing with only two main type of the ecosystem, that were equatorial ecosystem and river ecosystem, that we are going to discuss in today's lecture. Dear student, function of ecosystem is very important for maintaining the ecological balance in our environment. We all already know ecosystem play an important role in maintaining such balance. So now let's know more about the function of ecosystem. There are many functions, but we will see most important functions that are part of the ecosystem. The major function of the ecosystem are as follows. It regulates the essential ecological process and support life system and the render stability. And second thing that are very important about the function of ecosystem, that it is responsible for cycling the nutrient between biotic and abiotic factor, that we have already discussed biotic and abiotic factor in our structure of ecosystem. In the topic we are discuss it in a detail. Then the third very important function of the ecosystem, that it maintains the balance among the various trophic level. We already seen that detail about the trophic level. There are 5 trophic levels that we observe in the ecosystem. It cycle the minerals through the biosphere. You know that biosphere also very important layer. It's a layer of the earth planet where the life is exist. Dear student, last but not the least, the important things about the function of ecosystem, that is the biotic component help in the synthesis of the organic components that are involved in the exchange of energy. Dear student, one thing is very important. When we are talking about the function of ecosystem, that time we have to see what are the things that are help to function of the ecosystem. There are numbers of cycles, they are part of the function of the ecosystem. A nutrient cycle, or it is also known as the biological cycle, such as carbon cycle, nitrogen cycle, oxygen cycle, hydrogen cycle, and so many cycles, they are part of the functioning of the ecosystem. Then second thing, very important thing that are related to the function of the ecosystem, that is food chain. Then we have the food web, then we have the energy flow and the trophic level. These all things are very important in the function of the ecosystem. Dear student, let's discuss one by one. First, it is not possible to discuss all the cycles, but as an example, we will see in a short what is the carbon cycle. This is the first process which has play important roles in the function of ecosystem. The consist of the various cycles. But dear student, carbon is a very important element of all life forms. It is observed are the found in the various forms of the atmosphere. All the life forms are based on the carbon content, such as protein, fats, carbohydrates, carbonic salts, and so many things. They are the part of the carbon. A large portion of the carbon dioxide is present in the atmosphere, which is absorbed by the green plant and making their food with help of in the presence of the sunlight and the chlorophylls through the process of photosynthesis. Dear student, you know that all the green plants as a producer, they make their own foods and they also provide foods for other organisms, or it is also known as the consumers. The green plants provide food to all them. Dear student, when this food is transferred from producer toward the various consumer, that time this carbon is also transferred from producer toward the various consumer. It may be the primary consumer, it may be the secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, and so many consumers. They are part of the structure of the ecosystem. Dear student, when this all the foods is consumed by the various consumer, after the death of the consumers and also the trees, that whatever the carbon is transferred from producer toward the consumer, that is buried in the soil. They form the fossil fuels as such as the coal and the petrol. And when we burn this fossil fuel, all whatever the carbon is storage in the soil or in the earth, that it's also released through the various processes such as the respiration, or when we are burn this all fossil fuel like a coal, like a petrol in factory or the various process, that time this fossil fuel, this carbon in the form of fossil fuel burning is again released in the atmosphere. In this way, the amount of carbon dioxide which is consumed by the various things or various things like a producer or the consumer or even the decomposer, that are again released in the atmosphere. It means what will the consume the carbon dioxide or the part of the carbon in the ecosystem, that are also released through the various processes in the atmosphere. And therefore there is a balance between the whatever the carbon is enter in the ecosystem, and also the carbon dioxide or the various form of the carbon release the amount of the carbon in the atmosphere. So this is the cycle about, and such like a carbon cycle, whatever the cycle we just mentioned, that it may be the oxygen cycle, hydrogen cycle, water cycle, or the many cycle, they help to conducting the function or the continues the function of the ecosystem in our ecosystem. Dear student, then we have the very important part of the function of the ecosystem, that is food chain. You know that, student, what is the food chain? That we already discussed in our last lecture. Let's revise one very simple definition of the food chain. The transfer of food energy from the source in the planet through a series of organisms with repeated eating and being eaten is referred to as a food chain. Dear student, you know that this is a very important function or process that help to functioning the ecosystem. A food chain is a series of organisms, each one feeding on the other organism preceding it. Food chain is an energy pathway that we are observed in the ecosystem. Yes, student, here just we are going to see the one example of the food chain. You know that in each and every ecosystem, that the food chain is start with the green plants or the producer. Here in this figure, you will see that grass is a producer. And then we have the chain of the various consumers, like a primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, and quaternary consumer. In this figure, you will see that this grass is eaten by the grasshopper, which is a primary consumer in this example. Then again, the frog, that grasshopper is eaten by the frog, which is the secondary consumer in this example. Again, the frog is eaten by the snake, and snake is a tertiary consumer in this example. And lastly, the eagle, that snake is eaten by the eagle, which is quaternary consumer in this way. So in this way, the food is transferred from the producer to the primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumer, and quaternary consumer. So this type of the food chain, various food chain we observe on the surface. It may be the part of the terrestrial ecosystem, or it may be the part of the aquatic ecosystem. So in this way, the function of the ecosystem we observe that continuously run in our ecosystem or in around us. Then we have the third very important process that help to conducting the function of ecosystem, that is food web. Dear student, you know that the sequence of the transfer of the matter and energy in the form of food from organism to organism is known as food web. And we also see a lot of or the many food chain that are interconnected to each other in the food web. They provide alternative pathway to the food ability. This is the figure. Here we have one example of the food web. Later discuss. In this food web, you will find the lot of food chains are interconnected to each other. For example, let's see the first example. Here we have the plankton, then we have the grasshopper and the frogs. So in this way, so we have the a small food chain that is present in this food web. Then we have the second example, that is plankton. Here we have plankton. Then we have the mouse. Then we have the buzzards. So these are the again a small food chain that is available in this example. Then also we have the another two example of the food web that were observed in this picture. First is the berries. Then we have the grasshopper. Then we have the frog. Then we have the snake. Then we have the buzzard. So this is another example. The last example here, we have again berry, then the green fly, then we have the ladybirds, and last we have the dragonfly. So in this way, in this food web, you will find the numbers of the food chain that are interconnected with each other and they form the food web. So this food web is also very important to run the function of the ecosystem. Then we have energy flow. Dear student, that energy flow is also important to run the function of the ecosystem. In ecosystem, this flow of the energy like a food. The energy is transferred from radiant energy toward the chemical energy in the form of autotrophic plants, the photosynthesis process. You know that the sun is the ultimate source of all the ecosystem. The green plants make their own food in the presence of the sunlight and the chlorophyll. When they produce their own food and they also supply the food to the other consumers. Let us say in this energy flow, if we consume that this producer make the 10,000 kilocalories foods, then when the primary consumer will eat this producer, that time near about 10% kilocalories is transferred from producer to the primary consumer. That we have here in the rabbit. In this picture, we have the rabbit is the primary consumer. Again, from this primary consumer, when the secondary consumer consume the primary consumer or eat the primary consumer, that time again out of 1000 kilocalorie, near about 10% means 100 kilocalorie is transferred from primary consumer toward the secondary consumer. Here in this picture, we have the snake is the secondary consumer. Again, this food is again, or this energy in the form of food is again transferred from secondary consumer toward the tertiary consumer. So in this case, in the second stage, we have 100 kilocalories. But when this secondary consumer is consumed by the tertiary consumer that we have is eagle, then again, out of 100 kilocalories, 10% in 10 kilocalories is transferred from secondary consumer to towards consumer. And each stage, near about the 90% kilocalories it utilized for various processes by these consumers. It means in this figure, you will see there is a continuous energy flow. It is started or the observed from producer to primary consumer, from primary consumer to secondary consumer, from secondary consumer to tertiary consumer. So in this way, this type of the energy flow help to functioning of the ecosystem. Then again we have the trophic level. So this is also important to conducting the function of the ecosystem. Trophic level. The trophic level of an organism refer to a position occupied by it in a food chain. So that is very important. Let's see, there are 5 major trophic levels we observe each and every ecosystem. So in this figure, we are going to discuss the example of how the trophic level are observed in our ecosystem and that help to functioning the ecosystem. Dear student, the first thing that the first trophic level is consist of the producer. All the green plants are included at the or present in the first trophic level. Here in this figure, you will see the green plants. Then we have the second trophic level that all the primary consumers are stored at the second trophic level. So in this figure, we have the deer represent the primary consumers. And again, we have the third trophic level that is consist of the various secondary consumers like a fox or wolves. These present here the third trophic level. Then we have the fourth trophic level that is consist of the tertiary consumer like a lions, like a tiger, and so many other consumer that belong from such category. The last we have the fifth trophic level that consists of the various decomposers. In this way, that here is also you will find that the each from each stage you will find that the food or energy is transferred from one place to another. In this figure, we have it is transferred from first level to second level, from the second trophic level to third trophic level, and again from third trophic level to fifth trophic level. In this way, this type of the trophic level or the transfer of the food or the energy from one trophic level to another trophic level help to conducting the function of ecosystem. That is very important. Dear student, this was all about the function of the ecosystem. Then let us discuss the second of our objective of today's lecture, that is type of ecosystem. Dear student, you know that the types of ecosystem easily we can divide it into the two main classes. The first is the natural ecosystem. In ecosystem which is created by the nature itself is known as a natural ecosystem. Then we have the second category or the second type of the ecosystem is man-made ecosystem. Dear student, the ecosystem which is created by man with help of the natural thing is called as a man-made ecosystem. Then again, these both ecosystem we can classify it in various subtypes. If we are talking about the natural ecosystem, the natural ecosystem can be further classified into the two major types. That is, first is the terrestrial ecosystem. A ecosystem which are present or the found on the land is known as the terrestrial ecosystem, whereas we have the another subtype of the natural ecosystem, that is aquatic ecosystem. Ecosystem which are found in the water are known as the aquatic ecosystem. Again, these both ecosystem, that is terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem, we can again further classify into the various classes. Talking about the terrestrial ecosystem, generally terrestrial ecosystem we can classify into the three subtypes, that are forest ecosystem, grassland ecosystem, and desert ecosystem. In case of aquatic ecosystem, this ecosystem also we can classify into two major groups, that is marine ecosystem. It means the ideal example of this ecosystem is ocean ecosystem. Then again, the aquatic ecosystem we can classify it into the subtype, that is fresh water ecosystem. And dear student, the pond, a river are the best example of the fresh water ecosystem. Then if we are talking about the man-made ecosystem, this man-made ecosystem we can also classify into the subtype. The first thing are agriculture ecosystem. Here this word is agriculture. There is a correction in the spelling. This is the agriculture ecosystem. Then we have orchard ecosystem, then again the mining ecosystem, then urban ecosystem, and industrial ecosystem, and these n numbers of ecosystem you will observe around us that are made by the human being. So this, but as a part of our syllabus, we are going to discuss only about the forest ecosystem. I mean, here we have an example of the equatorial ecosystem. Then we have the second example of the aquatic ecosystem here, the one freshwater ecosystem, that is a river ecosystem, we are going to discuss in detail. Dear student, let's first discuss the equatorial ecosystem. Dear student, equatorial ecosystem is also known as a tropical rainforest ecosystem. So keep this word in your mind. That is very important word that are used for the equatorial ecosystem. And you know that the forest, we have a equatorial ecosystem. In this ecosystem, you observe a dense forest, and there you will find that the evergreen forest. Therefore, hence the forests are the evergreen and dense found in this ecosystem. Rainforests are the Earth's oldest living ecosystem as compared to other ecosystems. If we is talking about the location of this equatorial ecosystem, this region or this ecosystem is located on or the near the equator on both sides, near about 0 to 5 degree north latitude and 0 to 5 degrees south latitude. And for your kind information, near about 6% part of the world is occupied by this ecosystem. So in this ecosystem, we have many reasons. The main reason we are going to discuss here. The first is most important, that is Amazon basin, that is located in South America. Then we have the Congo basin, that is located in the Africa continent. Then we have the Malaysia, Indonesia, New Guinea, Philippines, Guyana, the coast of Africa. These all things are included in the equatorial ecosystem. If you see the map of this location or this region, that you find that this green color indicate the area that are covered by the equatorial ecosystem. The main things are here, main part I would like to highlight here. This is the Amazon basin. Then and here we have the Southeast Asian country such as Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, and Thailand. These all countries are included here. So let's discuss what type of the ecosystem we have here. When we are talking about the ecosystem, you know that the ecosystem structure included a biotic factor and the biotic factor. If you're talking about the equatorial ecosystem, here we have a very favorable physical or the biotic factor. The first thing, that rainfall. The average rainfall in this region we have about 200 centimeters. That is heavy rainfall we observe throughout the year in this region. If we're talking about the annual temperature, here we have an annual temperature is about 25 degrees Celsius to 27 degrees Celsius. Throughout the year, we have the same range temperature observed in this region. Humidity of this region is about 80 to 90%. And if we are talking about the soil, soils are enriched with the organic and inorganic material. They are very fertile soils we found or observed in this region. And one thing is very important, sunlight and minerals are also available and all on a large scale in this region. Dear student, these all things, all these abiotic factors are very favorable for the forest. Therefore, you will find that the very flourished forest or the dense forest, evergreen forest in this ecosystem. If we are talking about the biotic factor, we have producer, consumer, and decomposer. The various type of the producer, consumer, and decomposer are observed in this ecosystem. Let's talk about the producer. The various trees, plants, creeper, bushes, fir, orchards, etc. are grown here and work as a producer in this ecosystem. Throughout the year, you will find all these trees, plants are the producer, the present here on a large scale. The numbers of tree species is large and their diversity is too much. Dear student, if you see the near in 1 square kilometer, you will find the 750 species of the various plants and trees, or just where I just mentioned all these things. It means very rich species are available in this ecosystem. Near about 75% species of the world are occur in this ecosystem. For example, we have the mahogany, ebony, greenhearts, redwood, deodar, pine, rubber, rosewood, and so many trees are available here. These all are trees are major trees which are found in this ecosystem. If you're talking about the consumers are organisms that eat other organisms. In this ecosystem, the organisms are generally obtain the food by feeding on the other organism or the organic matter. The diversity and the abundance of the producer support a wide variety of the consumer. In this equatorial ecosystem, we have the various the primary consumer, secondary consumer, and tertiary consumer. If we're talking about the primary consumer, especially in the ecosystem, here we have the monkey, gorillas, chimpanzee, small birds, buffalo, elephant, and so many consumers are available here. If we're talking about the secondary consumer, then in this the majorly we have the frog, fox, owl, snake, and so many birds. They are part of the secondary consumer. They are available in this ecosystem. And tertiary consumer, it includes tiger, cheetahs, leopard, lion, and so many other tertiary consumer that belong from the same category. So here you will find various the numbers of consumers are available here in this ecosystem. Lastly, we have the decomposer. The major decomposer that were observed in this ecosystem are fungi, then we have the bacteria, then you have the earthworms, then you have the millipedes. These all things, and so many decomposer are observed in this ecosystem. Dear student, it was about today's lecture. I'm sure that you will understand, you might understand this all topic. Dear student, in next lecture, we are going to discuss a very important ecosystem, the type of ecosystem, that is the river ecosystem, which is the part of the aquatic ecosystem and represent the fresh water ecosystem. So thank you. Goodbye.